Chapter 45. So everything was set. After giving my final instructions to Veldora, I waited for an envoy to direct me to the council site. I didn't know where it was, so I'd be going along with Ramirez, who, by the way, also didn't know. I asked why, and she had replied, because someone always comes to take me there. Which made sense, I suppose, in its own way. The way she always got lost, wherever she went, I guess it's just a given that she had a guide. If someone doesn't really feel like memorizing a route, they never will, no matter how many times they repeat it. Either way, I figured someone would be teleporting in to guide us, so I decided to wait for that. Behind me, Ren stood to my right, quiet and composed. She was wearing her usual classic black and white maid uniform, but it was subtly more refined, polished brass buttons, carefully pleated skirt, and freshly pressed sleeves that hinted at meticulous preparation. A soft violet gleam in her eyes caught the light as she glanced over to ensure everything was in order. Even without a word, I could feel the seriousness in her demeanor. She had definitely made an extra effort. On left was Xian, standing tall with a hand on her hip, her signature secretary outfit as sharp as ever. She wasn't one for embellishments, just neatly adjusted cuffs, a tighter waistcoat, and her ever-present aura of readiness. She looked more like a bodyguard than a secretary right now, and judging from her barely contained grin, she was already fired up for Walpurgis. Ranga is my shadow as always. And lastly, Ciel's warmth stirred inside me, her presence steady and reassuring. All preparations complete, Master. Thanks, I whispered back, lips barely moving. The atmosphere around me grew quieter, more focused. This was it, the prelude to the night where I'd face the demon lords. Walpurgis awaited and I was ready. It was almost an hour before midnight when I was contacted. Not by the envoy I was expecting, but by Benimaru. What's up? Some kind of problem? I instinctively braced myself, expecting a sudden crisis, but instead, his tone was calm. Confident. No, my lady, quite the opposite. The battle's already begun and we've already gauged the enemy's full capabilities. Benimaru's next words carried a spark of excitement. We've got this. There's no doubt in my mind now. Victory is within reach, and because of that, I've had a thought. If Clayman's castle really lies just beyond that fog-drenched area Soe scouted, why not strike now while he's distracted? Soe and Hakuro are ready. Typical Benimaru, once he sees an opening, he dives for it. I hesitated. You're sure? This isn't a bluff or a trap? No, my lady, I'm confident. I'll remain at the main camp, so this strike team will consist of Soe and Hakuro. Wait, my brother. The teacup on the tray gave a little clink as Shuna, who had been carefully preparing tea with Ren just beside me, interrupted our thought communication and suddenly turned toward me. Her eyes were wide, but steady. Her voice, resolute. I wish to go with them, she said, stepping forward. To Clayman's castle. I blinked. You want to go too? Yes, she nodded. I've trained for this. I want to be there to stand with Hakuro and Soe. To prove myself as more than just a shrine maiden of Tempest. I studied her face carefully. She wasn't being impulsive. She wasn't angry or emotional. She was just determined. I don't doubt your abilities, Shuna, I said softly, but this is still dangerous. If something happened to you, I'll be fine, she said quickly. Then her tone softened. Besides, I'd never forgive myself if I stood back and did nothing. I paused. My heart clenched a little. After a beat, I smiled faintly and gave in. All right, you can go. Her eyes lit up, but before she could speak, I added quietly. But please, take care of yourself, Shuna. I don't want you to get hurt. Shuna blinked then blushed, her eyes flickering down. Why yes, my lady. I promise. And just then, I felt it. A faint stir from deep within me. Ciel, she didn't say anything, but I could feel it. Almost like she wanted to say something, but chose not to. Ciel, still nothing. Only the quiet stillness of her presence in my soul. Strange, but I let it go for now. Ren, still at Shuna's side, gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod though her eyes flicked between us, thoughtful. So now I had a 3-member team attempting to infiltrate Clayman's base of operations: Soe, Hakuro, and Shuna. I'd already seen them off, and with the final moments ticking down to midnight, I figured I'd use the time to check in with our favorite shut-in dragon. Hey, Veldora, I said, you got any thoughts on the other demon lords I'm about to meet? HMPH, I have no interest in such little gnats. He declared, arms crossed and nose in the air. Right, of course. But, he added with a knowing smirk, I suppose I can spare a moment to educate you, my dear Rimuru. Around 2000 years ago, he attacked and destroyed a city of vampires, which naturally earned him the anger of legions of those creatures, a chase he apparently loved. One of them, a female vampire, was particularly beautiful and beautifully dressed and boasted strength beyond all her peers. When the dust finally settled, her cadre of vampires disappeared from the scene, and Veldora didn't know what had happened to them. What was her name? I believe it was Luris. Miluz. Regardless, I never treated her that seriously, but she was a rather challenging plaything for me, so I would be wary around her. She can't take a joke, do you see? Plaything. I suppressed the urge to sigh. That was definitely more Veldora's fault than hers. Anyone would be a little pissed off after their homeland was burned to embers by a rampaging dragon with no concept of boundaries. Still, that name, Luris, Miluz, something about it tickled the back of my mind. Luris, Miluz, I murmured, turning over the syllables. Wait a second, do you mean luminous? Veldora blinked, then gave a toothy grin. Ah, yes, that sounds about right, probably luminous. I was close, wasn't I? He said it like he'd just remembered the name of an old anime protagonist. I stared at him for a second, trying to decide whether to be impressed or horrified. Luminous. I'd heard that name before. Not from Veldora, from Fuse, during our talks about the Western Holy Church. According to him, Luminous was the god Church worshipped. Supposedly an all-powerful, divine being who guided the faithful and protected humanity from monsters. But now Veldora just casually revealed that he'd fought someone named Luminous. A demon lord. I frowned, mind racing. Wait, when Hinata attacked me, she mentioned that she served Luminous. But that presence I felt during the fight. That overwhelming force watching in the background, it definitely felt like a demon lord. A powerful one. Back then, I thought it might have been Yuki pulling strings behind the scenes. But what if it wasn't? What if the god Hinata worships is actually that demon lord? Who is actually pulling the strings? Master. Ciel's voice entered my mind like a gentle chime, calm but firm. The probability of that scenario being true is high. The individual Hinata referred to as Luminous may very well be the same being Veldora once fought. So Veldora fought a demon lord named Luminous. There's a god named Luminous being worshipped by the church, and that same church wished to kill me. It fits too well. If we assume the demon lord is pretending to be a god, then all the contradictions start making sense. In fact, it sounds like something straight out of an isekai novel. Demon lords posing as gods, manipulating nations from the shadows, turning humanity against anyone who doesn't fit their narrative. No, I shouldn't jump to conclusions, I muttered. Ciel didn't object, though I could feel her attention linger. I mean, there could still be another explanation. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe there really is a god named Luminous, and the demon lord just happens to share the name. Maybe they're even two different beings. Or maybe someone's using that name to confuse people. Still, my instincts told me otherwise. And usually, when they stirred like this, I was better off listening. We need proof, I murmured. No more speculation. If Luminous is both a god and a demon lord, we'll need solid evidence before acting on it. Understood, Master. I will keep monitoring for any anomalies. Yeah, let's not do anything rash. I've got enough enemies without adding a potential god-demon lord hybrid to the list just yet. Just as I was trying to sort through all this information. Ooh, Ramirez suddenly cut in from beside me, swinging her legs as she hovered in the air. Did you know that Guy Valentine's a demon lord now, too? I blinked. Valentine. Yeah, he took over for the old demon lord a long time ago. Like, 1500 years back or something. Anyway, he's running things now. So the current demon lord is Valentine. That would mean the demon lord isn't Luminous. Wait, so God Luminous and demon lord Luminous are actually different people. Is that right? I murmured, mostly to myself. So much for my earlier theory. I mean, it could have made sense, but if someone else entirely is holding the demon lord's seat now, that might shoot a hole right through it. Unless, Master, this does not disprove the connection. The god Luminous and the demon lord may be part of the same organization or closely related. Valentine could be a subordinate or proxy. Ciel's calm voice echoed in my mind, as composed as always. That's actually still possible. But this is getting a little too tangled for now. Better to leave it and wait for more concrete info before jumping to wild conclusions again. Quote. Well, whatever, I muttered, brushing a hand through my hair. We'll deal with it when we have to. Romulus, meanwhile, had already moved on to poking around my table, blissfully unaware of the mental knot she'd just thrown me into. Next is Dagral, the giant demon lord. According to Veldora, he was another of his old rivals. The two of them had apparently clashed more than once, and with neither one ever coming out definitively on top, that alone told me plenty. Veldora actually remembered his name, which was rare enough to raise an eyebrow. If he made that strong of an impression, then Dagral must have been seriously tough. The kind of guy who could go toe-to-toe with a dragon and still walk away. Yeah, definitely not someone to underestimate. Looks like he's one of the real heavyweights among the demon lords. I'll need to keep a close eye on him at Walpurgis. Our conversation shifted toward the topic of demons. Apparently, Veldora had clashed with quite a few of them in his time. He made it sound like a game, said it was fun because even if he incinerated them, they'd just resurrect later, often stronger than before. Like sparring partners with built-in respawn timers. Great playmates, according to him. But even he had never fought their ruler. The so-called Demon King, supposedly residing in a castle way up on the frozen tundra of the northern continent. According to Veldora, it was just too much of a hassle. It is far too cold up there. What's the need for me to pay a visit? Qua ha 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 ha. The way he puffed himself up as he said that, for some reason, it reminded me of when Seal scolded him. Same overblown bravado, same overly rehearsed laughter, same guilty little twitch in his eye. I shot him a look but didn't press it. Somehow, I doubted I'd get a straight answer if I asked. So I kept quiet. Yes, well, guy isn't any pushover, Romulus declared, arms crossed with an air of authority. Me, him, and Milam are the oldest demon lords you'll ever find. If that's true, and he's in the same league as Milam, that'd make him ridiculously powerful. But then again, this is Romulus we're talking about. Somehow, hearing it from her makes Guy sound a lot less impressive. Like some overhyped side character. Still, I probably shouldn't write him off just yet. Especially considering Romulus had mentioned she lost most of her power a long time ago. Which could be very bad news. And with Milam being part of this whole Walpurgis mess too, the situation's already complicated enough. Guess I'll just wait and see how this plays out. No need to start panicking until I meet him in person. So, how many demon lords does that leave? Let's see. I'd already met Milam, Romulus, and Caroline. We'd just gone over Valentine, Dagral, and Guy. Then there was Frey. Phobio mentioned she landed the final blow that took Caroline down. Leon was still in the picture too, and of course, there was Clayman, my current problem child. That made 9, which meant there should be one more. I couldn't say, Veldora replied, stroking his chin like a sage, which, coming from him, meant absolutely nothing. Thankfully, Romulus decided to step in. Oh, you must mean Dino, she exclaimed, flailing her arms like she'd just remembered the name of her childhood friend. He's even more of a goof-off demon lord than I am. So that's 10. Some of them had obvious grudges against Veldora. Great, just another mess to add to the growing list. I suppose you and Dino are two peas in a pod, then, I commented. We are not, Romulus snapped instantly. I'll just ignore that. 10 demon lords, each with their own quirks and apparently, several with reasons to be annoyed at Veldora. I'd need to keep that in mind when we finally sat down for the Walpurgis Council. As we talked, I felt a wrinkle in space erupt out of nowhere. Here comes our ride, I thought, as a huge, bombastic, ominous-looking gate burst open before us. Pretty fancy. Me, I usually just kind of ripped a hole in time and space, crude but effective. Still, this had style. Maybe I should start visualizing something like this when I teleport. Once I had a clear image, it'd probably be easier to whip up a gate like this myself. The door creaked open, and out stepped a green-haired woman in a dark red maid's outfit. She gave Romulus a polite bow. I have come to take you, Lady Romulus. And is this your guest? I'll be happy to guide you together. Then, without another word, she moved to the side and stood silently by the gate, eyes downcast, her presence all but vanishing. Definitely a pro, refined and perfectly trained. I glanced at Ren. She gave the maid a quick once-over, then gave a tiny, solemn nod of approval, arms crossed, like some veteran inspector satisfied with a junior's technique. Honestly, it was kind of funny. I half expected her to whip out a clipboard and start jotting down, graceful bow, 9/10, or, posture, acceptable. But, of course, she didn't say a word, just resumed her usual calm expression like nothing happened. But something concerned me. She was exuding just as much overpowering force as Diablo at his best. Calm, collected, yet radiating an aura that made the air feel heavier just by standing there. Not just a skilled maid, no, this woman was the real deal. Seal, she is a demon peer, master. Just like Diablo. Figures. Of course, I didn't show any reaction on the outside, but inside I was raising my guard a notch. A demon peer, casually serving as an escort maid. Yeah, that wasn't normal. What kind of demon lord was I about to meet that needed someone like her as a servant? Oh, hey, haven't seen you in an age, misery. How's Guy doing? Ramirez flapped her wings, grinning as if she were talking to an old friend. Quote. It is not upon me to worry about the condition of my master. Misery replied, her voice as still as water, calm, unshaken, and chillingly composed. Ren, who had been quietly observing, gave a very approving nod at that reply. Her expression remained unreadable, but that subtle gesture said it all. Seriously, I don't always get what goes through her mind, but apparently, that kind of loyalty and discipline scored high marks with her. Ah, haven't changed a bit, have you? Well, that's fine, Ramirez replied with a laugh, before fluttering confidently into the gate like she owned it. We followed behind her. I gave Misery one last glance as I passed. So she worked for Guy, huh? That meant she wasn't just some random servant, this was one of the demon peers, and not the kind you could ignore. The demon lord Guy. If he had someone like Misery casually escorting guests at the door, then I needed to be careful. Very careful. Still, I kept my cool. No use riling him, at least, not unless the times really called for it. Still, something about it didn't sit right with me. Having someone as powerful as Misery on par with Diablo, no less assigned to this kind of menial task. Escort duty, really, talk about arrogance, no pride, the kind that comes from absolute power. Guy must be so confident in his strength that he treats people like Misery as tools for the most basic of chores. It wasn't about disrespecting her, more like, to someone like him, this was all just routine. That level of casual dominance. It was unnerving. The world's rulers were waiting for me beyond, but I didn't feel scared. Seal was with me, and in the worst-case scenario, I could always call on Veldora. If anything, I felt cool as a cucumber as I stepped through the door, ready for whatever lay ahead. The impossibly ornate door connected right to the meeting hall. A large, round table was positioned in the center, with 12 evenly spaced chairs surrounding it. 10 demon lords were on the invite list, with Caroline absent, so 2 of these seats would be empty even if I took up one. Attendees were seated according to the order of their demon lord appointments, which meant I was placed right in front of the door. That was fine by me, I wasn't exactly aiming to make some grand entrance, and besides, it gave me the perfect vantage point. For now, the room was mostly empty. Only 2 people were present. One of them was Ramirez, sitting in the seat of honor all the way across the room. She was merrily kicking her legs like a child stuck on a long trip, clearly not taking the gravity of this meeting seriously. Typical. I figured I could safely ignore her. No, my attention was on her right at the seat directly facing me. There I saw a man with bewitchingly attractive red hair. Definitely a man, but with a certain androgynous charm that gave his sharp features an almost feminine allure. His eyes were closed, but I doubted he was asleep. One glance was enough to tell me, this guy was dangerous. Analyze and assess suggested he wasn't anything special, but that only made it worse. My instincts, sharpened over countless battles and refined by Ciel's ever-watchful presence, screamed otherwise. If she wasn't here, I might have been fooled. He radiated the illusion of a rookie, some magically strong kid who couldn't control his aura, but that was exactly the bait. The way he concealed his real strength, carefully leaking just the right amount of aura to mislead others. It was like fighting had already begun the moment I looked at him. And somehow, I felt I'd already lost. My gaze remained locked on the red-haired man. I couldn't see his aura, couldn't read his intent, couldn't even grasp the depth of his strength. And that was the most terrifying part. If someone like that ever turned his eyes on Tempest, no, even Veldora wouldn't be able to stop it. He'd be overwhelmed before he could react. The thought clawed at my chest. That man could erase everything I built, everyone I loved, without so much as lifting a finger. Was this the true power of an old demon lord? Someone even Milam would consider her equal. It made me feel helpless. No, more than that, it made me feel small. Like I was a child walking blindly into a storm. And while I stood frozen in my thoughts, shaken to my core, Ren was calmly strolling alongside Misery, the demon peer. She hadn't even batted an eye at the overwhelming pressure in the room. Instead, I heard her voice, composed as ever. I must ensure the tea is brewed precisely to my lady's liking. If not, she might pout again. She really said that. I blinked in disbelief. Was she joking? No, this was Ren. She was absolutely serious. She moved with the same grace she always did, helping a being as powerful as Misery without so much as flinching. Seriously, what's with her? My hands curled into fists on my lap. I hated this feeling. I hated knowing there was such a massive gap between me and the people sitting in this room. I needed to get stronger. I had to, if not for my own sake, then for everyone relying on me. Seal, I called out in my heart. Please, help me grow. I'm not strong enough yet. Not like this. There was a gentle warmth in the back of my mind as her voice answered, soft and certain. Don't worry, Master. Once this is over, I will make sure you stand equal to no, above all of them. You have my vow. A quiet reassurance, steady, unshaken, and somehow, that alone gave me the strength to breathe again. Thanks, Seal. For now, let's stick to our usual strategy. I let out a small breath, letting the pressure slide off my shoulders just a bit. My idea had always been to make the enemy underestimate me as much as possible, keep my cards close to my chest, hide my true power, and let them relax just enough to leave an opening. If they misjudged me, if they thought I was just some upstart playing leader, then that was all the better. Give them the wrong information to work with. And then take advantage of their mistake. In a way, it wasn't so different from what this red-haired demon lord across from me was doing. Maybe that's what made him feel so dangerous, because I could understand his strategy all too well. A mirror held up to my own approach, except it felt like I was looking at the perfected version of what I had only just begun to master. This was Guy Crimson, and he was clearly on a whole other dimension. Everything about him, his presence, his stillness, even the way he sat with his eyes closed, radiated composure backed by absolute power. I had barely begun to process what kind of threat he represented when the massive door behind me opened again. A large figure lumbered inside, his heavy footsteps thudding against the ground with enough weight to draw everyone's attention. Dagral, the demon lord of giants. One of the oldest demon lords still active, and one of the few who could go head-to-head with Veldora and walk away. His sheer physical presence dominated the room, and his aura was like a boulder pressed against my chest, nothing hostile, just raw, unfiltered mass. Without hesitation, Dagral strode forward and slammed himself into a seat to Guy's right. The table even creaked faintly under his weight, but no one dared comment. He leaned back and casually propped his massive feet on the table. Well, that wasn't proper decorum, but who was going to stop him? The empty seat between him and Guy must have belonged to Milam, judging by the placement. That meant the table was organized by the order of Demon Lord appointments, with the oldest seated closest to Guy on one end, and me, the newest, on the opposite. The divide was clear. Power, experience, history, all of that clustered around one half of the table. And then there was me, the newbie, sitting on the opposite end. This was going to be a long night. Now another one entered the hall. A handsome, muscle-bound man dressed in rich, regal clothing, every bit as ostentatious as his presence. He wasn't quite as towering as Dagral, but the aura he carried was anything but subtle. His short, curly blonde hair was styled in a carefree, unruly way that suggested a fierce personality beneath the surface. His face looked sculpted, chiseled cheekbones, a strong jawline, and eyes that seemed to flicker with both confidence and calculated charm. He walked with grace and confidence, his posture practically radiating aristocratic pride. Most notably, though, were the two long fangs peeking from the corners of his lips. A vampire, through and through. He must have been the Demon Lord Valentine. There was no mistaking it. He took the seat directly to Romulus's left, which, judging by the assigned order, placed him on the older end of the Demon Lord spectrum. Perhaps he was as ancient as Dagral, or maybe he simply inherited the seat of someone who was. It didn't really matter whatever the reason, he had the look of someone who ruled with quiet but absolute confidence. What struck me more than Valentine himself were the two people he brought with him. One was an elderly man, the classic manservant type. His back was perfectly straight, his expression calm, his presence almost non-existent, an ideal attendant. And yet, his aura, while utterly restrained, had a depth to it. Not someone I'd want to provoke. But the real eye-catcher was the other one. A silver-haired girl, her skin like porcelain, her presence almost ethereal. One of her eyes was a piercing red, the other, a glimmering blue. She looked like she was just stepping out of her teenage years, clad in an elegant maid-style dress that only emphasized the eerie stillness in her movements. She almost shimmered with beauty, but that wasn't what chilled me. No, what sent a jolt down my spine was the sensation. The same one I felt when I was fighting Hinata. That same terrifying pressure I couldn't identify back then. She was there, watching, no doubt about it now. Demon Lord Luminous or God Luminous, if the church was to be believed. Whoever or whatever she truly was, she was right here. Sitting like a delicate flower in bloom, yet emanating the kind of threat only monsters could. But just as I was steeling myself for that realization, I caught sight of something even more nerve-wracking. Ren. She was casually strolling across the hall like she owned the place. Without a word, she gracefully approached him, the red-haired man at the far end of the table. Guy. Then, without hesitation, she silently placed a teacup in front of him. The room seemed to freeze. Guy glanced down at the cup, then looked up at Ren, his gaze sharp and curious. Ren didn't flinch, she simply gave a small nod, as if approving the aroma, before stepping back without a sound. It was like a surreal scene. I had no idea what she was thinking. Seriously, what goes through her head? But that wasn't the end of it. Guy's eyes, for the first time, shifted toward me. Calm, collected, and then just faintly amused. Open double angle bracket warning. Master, Guy is attempting to analyze you. Close double angle bracket. Ciel's voice rang crisply in my mind. Open double angle bracket. I've partially blocked the attempt. However, a full block would reveal my presence. Close double angle bracket. ... So that's the level we're dealing with. Even Ciel couldn't fully obscure me without exposing herself. I had walked into the lair of monsters, and even now, they were probing for weakness. After a moment, Guy gave the slightest of nods, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakably satisfied. ... He'd seen something. Even if Ciel had blocked the bulk of it, I was sure he'd gotten enough to pique his interest. My heart started racing again, but not because of Guy this time. No, it was Ren. She'd moved on. Calmly, without a single wasted motion, she approached Dagrel next. The massive giant barely noticed her, but she offered the same respectful bow and presented him with a cup of tea. A mountain of muscle being served with grace and refinement. A surreal contrast. And then, she turned again. Now she was headed toward Valentine. It was as if she was doing a slow parade past the most dangerous beings in the world, unshaken, untouchable. I couldn't even guess what kind of nerves she had, or if she even felt fear to begin with. But as she passed by that maid, the silver-haired girl I now knew must be Luminous, I caught something odd. The girl's gaze shifted, her head subtly turned, and her two colored eyes locked onto Ren's back. ... And then, her breath caught. I saw it clearly. For just a fraction of a second, the girl's lips parted ever so slightly, her chest rising in a sharp inhale. Her face, normally composed in that cold, aristocratic elegance, flickered into something else. Her gaze grew heavy, fixated. A flush rose to her cheeks. And then, just for the briefest instant, her expression twisted into something almost lewd, predatory. Then, in the blink of an eye, it vanished. As if all of that was just my imagination. She returned to her composed, as if nothing happened, eyes forward, hands folded on her lap. ... But I saw it, and it sent a different kind of chill down my spine. Did I just witness God's perversion? Or maybe, she just likes beautiful women. Either way, Ren had once again walked past literal calamity without even realizing the hurricane she was leaving behind. Seriously, what's with her? After serving Valentine with her usual unshakable poise, Ren finally made her way to me. She moved like a shadow, calm, precise, and composed. With delicate fingers, she placed the teacup down on the table in front of me. Then, without a word, she leaned in closer just enough for her violet eyes to meet mine beneath those dark lashes. Her face was expressionless, but there was a flicker in her eyes. As if she wanted to say something. Her gaze subtly swept the room. ... Then shifted again. Hesitation. That alone was enough to surprise me. Ren hesitating. I tilted my head slightly, signaling that I noticed. She didn't say anything, but the tension in her brow suggested she was debating it. She didn't want to speak here. Too many ears, too many eyes, too much danger. So I gently closed my eyes and thought. Ren, let's speak this way. I activated thought communication and reached out to her. A moment later, I felt the link settle in place. Seal, I asked cautiously. No one can listen in on this, right? Especially that guy. Her answer was immediate and reassuring. Of course not, Master. I've constructed a multi-layered interference veil. Your connection is completely secure. That soothing, confident tone. Even he won't be able to eavesdrop, not without alerting me. I let out a small breath of relief. Thanks, Seal. Always, Master. I looked back at Ren. She was still slightly bent forward, her hand hovering near my shoulder, just enough to keep up appearances that she was only delivering tea. In our private channel, I asked. What is it, Ren? My lady, Ren began, her voice calm but edged with intent. That maid serving Valentine, she doesn't truly feel like a maid to me. My golden eyes flicked briefly toward the silver-haired girl standing quietly beside Valentine. You mean the one with mismatched eyes? Yes. There was a short pause. Is she the god Luminous you mentioned earlier? I blinked. Ren's intuition was, as usual, unnervingly sharp. I hadn't mentioned much, but she was already drawing lines between my musings and what she saw. Not that I was surprised this was Ren, after all. She had her own quiet way of dissecting people and things around her. But, what do you mean she doesn't feel like a maid? She's acting like a proper maid, yes, but the aura she gives off is nothing like a subordinate's. It's far too composed, like she's observing everything from a higher plane, not attending to it. ... You think she's faking the role? I'm sure of it. Her tone was calm, but absolute. It reminds me of this manga I picked up because the title mentioned a maid. Turns out it was a psychological drama. Wait, that's how she picks to read. The story's about a mysterious noble household where only the mastermind and the decoy know who the real mastermind is. The decoy betrays the mastermind and tries to take her place. He even tries to kill her. But she survives barely and ends up rescued by the male protagonist. They join forces, defeat the decoy, and in the end, the guy becomes her personal slave. Wait, hold on, I said, still trying to wrap my head around it. Why does the male protagonist become the mastermind's slave at the end? Isn't it supposed to be a happy ending? You know, marriage, confessions, riding off into the sunset kind of stuff. Ren blinked slowly, her voice as composed as ever. The female lead was a sadist, and the protagonist was a masochist. It's a perfect relationship, my lady. ... I stared at her, speechless. ... What kind of story do you read? I muttered. Ren calmly placed the teapot back on the tray with practiced elegance. Only the ones that reflect reality, my lady. She gave me the faintest of smirks. Was she messing with me? I felt Ciel's amused giggle echo gently in the back of my mind. This maid is way too dangerous. Ren quietly returned to her position behind me just as the fifth person arrived alone, his movements so sluggish he looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. 2 swords hung lazily from his belt, the only gear he carried. I caught a quick look at his pale blue eyes under dark purple hair streaked with silver. He had a sharp face, but his sleepy gaze and overall listless vibe made him look half asleep. As he drifted toward his seat, I heard Ren's voice through the still active thought communication link. That one definitely gives sloth energy, my lady. Sloth, like the sin. I blinked. The 7 deadly sins. You once said your unique skill gluttony was based on one, remember? That got me thinking. Maybe the demon lords have skills tied to their dominant desires. Since usually demon lords equals sins. That's an interesting theory. Before I could say more, Ciel suddenly chimed in with clear intrigue in her voice. Master, it is highly probable. People often develop skills that manifest their core desires. If their personalities match, the correlation with sin-based skills could be significant. Wait, seriously? Indeed. Ren's deductions, while unconventional, hold surprising merit. Guess we're really leaning into the anime logic now. Ren didn't miss that, of course. You have no idea how many times I've seen this in stories. Red-haired prideful guy. Classic pride. Ramirez is the tiny chaos gremlin who hoards stuff equals greed. Lady Milam's temper. Obviously wrath. That luminous maid. She totally had that look, so lust. And that sleepy guy. Total sloth build. I've read this setup in at least 3 different series. ... You've really put thought into this. Naturally. It's essential research, my lady. A proper strategist knows the tropes. Ciel didn't respond, but I could feel her pause, surprised and maybe even impressed. Was it just me, or had Ren somehow accidentally tapped into a surprisingly valid classification method for the most powerful beings in the world? Ren didn't stop there. Besides, pride is usually portrayed as the strongest in most stories. And that red-haired guy? He reeks of pride. It only supports my theory, doesn't it? To my horror, Seal gave a thoughtful hum. That is a valid hypothesis. People do often acquire skills aligned with their deepest desires. His aura indeed suggests pride. Wait, hold on, Seal. No, don't encourage her. I cut in immediately, alarmed. You're supposed to be the logical one. I'm simply stating that her deduction has merit, Master. I groaned internally. This was bad, very bad. Great. First Ren gets corrupted by manga, and now she's corrupting Seal, too. What's next? A Demon Lord skill tier list. Of course, Ren wasn't done. But don't worry, Master. There are stories where gluttony is the strongest. Like that one with the cute spider lowly granny who has, like, 90,000 stats. She just keeps eating everything in her way. That's not you know what. I'm not even going to ask. Ren sounded so proud of herself, and worse, Seal was listening. I could feel her curiosity stirring. You're totally the gluttony-type protagonist, Master. All soft smiles and politeness, until you consume your enemies whole and turn them into your power. Stop treating me like a Pokemon who has a type advantage against Guy. Seal, calmly, she may have a point. No, she doesn't. At this rate, Seal was going to start recommending light novels to me and Ren would start designing stat charts for Demon Lords. While we were having this useless discussion, once Dino finished saying his hellos, if you could even call that lazy mumble a greeting, Dino sluggishly made his way to his seat. It was right next to Valentine's, marking him as another member of the old guard. Without acknowledging anyone, he flopped down and, in a move that felt more like a collapsing puppet than a person, immediately rested his head on the table and started dozing off. Right, so that's Sloth, then. I glanced at Ren, who was still quietly behind me. She didn't say anything else, but I could sense her smugness through the still active thought communication. A silent, I told you so, if I ever felt one. Seal was the one to speak next, sounding genuinely impressed. That is, concerning. If their abilities truly align with their deepest desires, then there is a high probability that each of these demon lords does possess a sin-based ultimate skill. No, we are not turning this into another theory hour, I quickly shot back in my mind. I could practically hear Ren getting ready to link 10 different anime to this situation, and the last thing I needed was for Seal to start taking otaku comparisons seriously. I was like sin of gluttony, sure, but that didn't mean I wanted to start eating people just to match up with some overpowered spider lowly granny with 90,000 stats. Anyway, back to Dino. As weird as it was watching someone fall asleep at a demonic round table of doom, none of the others seemed to react. Either they were used to this, or they knew better than to disturb him, and that alone made me more uneasy than if he'd come in breathing fire. If someone like that could just nap through a gathering like this, it meant either he was insanely powerful, or just didn't consider the rest of us worth staying awake for. And frankly, I wasn't sure which was worse. To be continued.